Good morning. Welcome to the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors of our regular meeting of October 14, 2014. Calling the meeting to order. Before I go on to our recognition and acknowledgments, I just would like to report out on our closed session of October 7th. I did report out, but there was nobody present, so I'm taking this opportunity to do so again. The board met in closed session in regards to an interim county administrative officer, and we voted on a 4-0 with Supervisor Spellman absent to appoint our interim CAO, Shirley Ryan, or Shirley Ryan to the interim CAO position through January 31st, 2015. And that date was set as to give an opportunity for any changeovers with the board in January to have an opportunity to participate in the CAO process in 2015. So with that, I would ask that you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance this morning. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. On this morning's agenda, we have recognition and acknowledgments. Item number 1 is brought to us from the Sheriff's Department, adopting a proclamation recognizing the week of October 23rd through the 31st, 2014 as Red Ribbon Week for Calaveras County. We have someone from the Sheriff's Department here to...
Good morning. I'm Sergeant Tim Stern with the Sheriff's Office, and as you mentioned, next week is going to be Red Ribbon Week. The story behind Red Ribbon Week started in 1985 on February 7th when Agent Enrique Kiki Camarena, who worked for the DEA, was stationed in Mexico. And his assignment was involving the Mexican cartel and specifically cocaine drug traffickers. That day, that agent was scheduled to meet his wife at about 2 o'clock, and he was kidnapped off the street. And a month later, his body was found in a shallow grave. He had been tortured and then murdered. Following his death, Congressman Douglas Hunter, who was a personal friend of the Agent Camarena, launched the Camarena Club, which then turned into a nationwide event under Ronald Reagan. And since that time, Red Ribbon Week, again, is a nationwide event. More than 80 million people participate in this event. Most of all, the important thing to remember is that this is a week that we celebrate being drug-free, but being drug-free is a year-long, lifelong commitment. I do have red ribbons that I'll leave here for anyone who'd like them. Board members, you should be receiving a red ribbon, and I'd ask that we wear them for the week to recognize what it's for and to remember our pledge to be drug-free. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that history. At this time, I'm going to read the proclamation. We have before us adopting a proclamation recognizing the week of October 23rd through 31st as Red Ribbon Week for Calaveras County. Whereas alcohol and drug abuse in this nation have reached epidemic stages, and whereas it is imperative that visible, unified prevention education efforts by community members be launched to eliminate the demand for drugs. And whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign offers citizens the opportunity to demonstrate their commitment to drug-free lifestyles, no use of illegal drugs, no illegal use of illegal drugs, and whereas the National Red Ribbon Campaign will be celebrated in every community in America during Red Ribbon Week, October 23rd through 31st, 2014. And whereas businesses, government, parents, law enforcement, media, medical institutions, religious, schools, senior citizens, service organizations, and youth will demonstrate their commitment to healthy, drug-free lifestyles by wearing and displaying red ribbons during this week-long campaign. Whereas the community of Calaveras will further commit its resources to ensure the success of the Red Ribbon Campaign. Now therefore it be resolved that the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County does hereby authorize the week of October 23rd through 31st, 2014 be designated as Red Ribbon Week and encourages its citizens to participate in drug prevention education activities not only during Red Ribbon Week, but all year long, making a visible statement that we are strongly committed to a drug-free Calaveras County. Be it further resolved on behalf of our citizens, we, the members of the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County, do hereby approve this proclamation.
So moved.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson. Are there any comments, public comments on this issue? All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. Sergeant?
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Item number 2 is brought to us by Public Health Services, proclaiming October 2014 as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County. Welcome.
Thank you. Good morning, I'm Linda Wynn. I'm the Public Health and Nursing Services Manager, and with me are Robin Bunch and Marcy Kaywood, public health nurses as well. October is National Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and that is a national campaign to raise awareness of the issue about breast cancer. You see the pink lights and the pink ribbons. We're all wearing pink. Mark Twain Hospital had their Pink in the Night event on October 1st, and Public Health has sent information to providers to give to their clients about breast health. Breast cancer affects not only the woman, but affects her family, her friends, her co-workers, and her community. Every one of us knows someone who has been affected by breast cancer. 1 in 8 women born in the United States will be affected by breast cancer at some point in her life. There are factors which a woman cannot control, and that is her age. The older we get, the risk increases. Her family history plays a big part as well. And if a woman has had a previous episode of breast cancer, then she's more at risk for developing another encounter with breast cancer. The things that we can control are the things that every one of us does to stay healthy, maintain a healthy weight, plenty of physical exercise, and of course, limit your alcohol consumption. Mammograms and self-breast exams are two very critical ways in which breast cancer can be detected early. Early detection leads to early treatment, which leads to a better outcome. Mammograms are available and are now covered under the Affordable Care Act. However, each woman should check with her insurance company to ensure that her insurance plan is covering it. There are low and no-cost programs available as well for women who don't have that option. And if a woman is needing to locate any of those programs, just contact the Public Health Department and we'll be glad to help. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. That was very nice.
Thank you.
All right, we have a proclamation on behalf of the board I'd like to read. Whereas breast cancer is the second most common cancer in women, and whereas 1 in 8 women born today in the United States will develop breast cancer at some point in their lifetime, whereas early detection and treatment of breast cancer allows most women to live long and healthy lives, and whereas mammography is the best way to find breast cancer early, and mammograms are covered for women over 40 under the Health Care Reform Act. Whereas public awareness and early detection can increase the number of women who survive breast cancer. Therefore, be resolved, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors proclaims October as National Breast Cancer Awareness Month in Calaveras County. At this point, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson and second by Supervisor Wright. Are there any public comments on this item?
Breast cancer also affects men.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. It is more rare than women, and unfortunately, it is often discovered later on when treatment is less effective. But yes, it does.
Thank you. Any further public comments? Marita, did you?
I just want to thank the health department for continuing to do this every year.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's good that you bring the message, people can hear about it, maybe give you a contact.
Okay.
That's important. I think a lot of people sit on their negative or illnesses or negative feelings.
Many people are afraid of what the outcome is
Yeah.
going to be. If I don't know, then it will go away.
I've seen that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Item 3 on the agenda is brought to us by the District Attorney, approving a proclamation recognizing October 2014 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Barbara Uke, District Attorney. October is obviously a very big month. Important, you can see I have my pink ribbon for breast cancer awareness and also my purple ribbon for Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It is also a nationally recognized month. And I'm here to present and request that you recognize October as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And before I turn it over to Kelly Figueroa from the Crisis Center, who is going to give you some numbers, I think she does that every year for Marita particularly, I want to share with you some anecdotal evidence of what we've seen this last year, just as a reminder that domestic violence victims come from everywhere, every walk of life, every economic level. We certainly have what you might stereotypically think of as domestic violence victims, those women primarily who are trapped in relationships, no job, nowhere to go, except possibly the Crisis Center. And maybe they can't leave. They feel they can't leave. They feel they have no options. But we've had some victims this year who are wealthy, successful women, and the primary breadwinner, and they ended up in domestic violence relationships. So it's just to remind you that they can come from every walk of life, and that for these particular victims, there is shame and embarrassment. They don't want to report. They're worried about the stigma that comes along with being a domestic violence victim. And so I just want to throw that out there so that if there are people in those types of relationships, there is, I would encourage them to come forward, to report. It's not worth being trapped in those relationships because of the stigma. There is help out there, and they're not alone. So I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to Kelly.
Good morning. Kelly Figueroa from the Resource Connection. So Barbara was talking about the different kinds of victims and the stigma in reporting. And I have some interesting statistics about that. So we have the numbers from the Angels Camp Police Department and the Calaveras County Sheriff's Department as with regard to the domestic violence arrests in the last 12 months. And there was a total of 238, which seems like a pretty big number. But the Calaveras Crisis Center served 555 victims of domestic violence. So that's about 43% that reported where there were arrests involved. A little under 60% that did not. And I don't believe that everybody comes forward even to the Crisis Center, even though it's confidential. It's just a huge number, and it's a big problem. And one of the things that Marita likes me to bring every year is where the victims are coming from. So we've done this by district, and we have District 1. Our clients that we saw at the Crisis Center, of the 555, 138 came from District 1. 54 were District 2, 28 from District 3, 62 from District 4, and 27 from District 5. There were 54 out of county because we serve people regardless of where they're from. And there are 192 that did not report. So those would be either hotline calls, anonymous, people that don't want to talk about where they're from because they're afraid that someone's going to find out they're there, that there's going to be some kind of repercussions for coming forward and getting services. So those are really interesting numbers. So when we talk about victims of domestic violence, I think the ones that we forget often are children. So if we served 555 adults who were victims of domestic violence, that could be men or women, if you look at the fact that probably that each of those families have maybe one child. That's 555 children who are witnessing domestic violence. And probably more than half of those have more than one child. So those numbers can just escalate. And there's a lot of really negative effects that domestic violence have on children. I mean, children that are in homes where there's domestic violence have a really high incident of child abuse. But if they are not physically being abused or emotionally being abused, just being around that violence, around that negativity can really affect them in certain ways. I have this report that I pulled off the internet. It talks about the emotional responses of children who witness domestic violence. They include fear, guilt, shame, sleep disturbances, sadness, depression, and anger. Physical responses, some children may have stomach aches, headaches, bedwetting, loss of the ability to concentrate. You know, a lot of things that teachers notice in school that they can't quite figure out might be some kind of indicator that there might be some violence at home. Behavioral responses of children who witness domestic violence may include acting out, withdrawal, anxiousness to please. They may show anxiety and have a short attention span, and they also may experience developmental delays in speech, motor, or cognitive skills. It's really weird. You get up here and you can't talk. Something about this microphone. So they may also use violence to express themselves, displaying increased aggression with peers or their parents. The thing that I thought was the most telling, and I think that we need to pay a great amount of attention to, is that witnessing domestic violence is the single best predictor of juvenile delinquency and adult criminality. And so when people don't want to talk about domestic violence in their community, when they don't want to talk about what's happening next door, it's having a huge impact on our community and our children. This is our future. These are the people that are going to be the future board of supervisors. And so we really need to look closer. I'm always telling you to ask the question, find out what's going on. And if you can't understand why the parent, why the adult is staying in the situation or why they're putting up with that, maybe you can look at the child and look at helping the child and seeing if you can get the child some help. We do have some events. Well, we have one event this month that I would like to invite you to. I have invitations for you on Wednesday, October 29th from 3:30 to 5 at the San Andreas Library. We're going to be showing some posters that were done by students at Calaveras High School regarding Domestic Violence Awareness Month. They will be there to talk about what they were thinking when they did the posters, what domestic violence, how it's affected them if it has. We'll have some refreshments. We're going to have a short program at around 4. If you can't make it that day, you can go see the posters. They're there now, and hopefully you'll be able to join us. So I am going to, I guess Barbara's going to read the resolution, and I'm going to bring up, or Debbie, but I'm going to bring some pins up and some invitations. I have one for you too. Okay, thanks.
Thank you. So, Monsieur, if we, members of the public, think that something might be going on, but don't want to sort of overreact, or what should we do? Call your office, call Kelly, call the sheriff's office? What would be the protocol?
Well, I think you could call the sheriff's office or Angels Camp if it's an Angels Camp. You could certainly call Kelly's office to get some advice, guidance, maybe get some referrals, and get some ideas of what you can do, because not every situation is one that you as a concerned citizen should be barging into. There's always safety concerns. Domestic violence calls are the most riskiest calls for law enforcement because of the level of violence and emotion involved. I mean, this is it's an intimate crime. It's something that's going on in someone's home, and I think all of us feel that way. Our home is our castle. So, especially when there's something violent going on there, it's a big secret, and you don't want outsiders coming in. So obviously, we don't want to encourage people to put themselves at risk, but But it's good to do the simple act that Kelly suggested, is ask the question. I think, I don't remember if it was last year or the year before, you told a story about how you were in the grocery store and you saw a woman with a black eye. And I don't remember if you asked or if you thought about it. You did. So, in a situation like that, you can ask. You can ask, because if you don't, what's the message? Oh, I'm walking around with a black eye and it's okay. No one's noticing. I'm worthless. No one's even caring. But that simple act of caring and reaching out could make all the difference. It might not, but it could. And so I would encourage each of you to be bold. It's hard. It's hard because you don't want to be invading someone's privacy, or you feel you might be embarrassing them or you're overstepping. But that simple act of kindness is really what it is, could make all the difference in the world to that person. And maybe you would have some of the referral information. There is help. There is help, 754-1300. It's a pretty easy number to remember. That's the crisis center number. So in those type of situations, that's probably what I would advise. Kelly, would you advise anything different?
Asking the question is important. You want to do that in a confidential, area. We have checklists and we have some resources that maybe you could have on hand, and you could, when somebody's alone, hand them to them and say, I'm concerned about you and you may need these resources, and they're completely confidential. Anybody that calls our hotline or comes into our office, they don't have to make a report. We're going to talk to them about that. We're going to encourage that, but they don't have to. It's completely their choice. So they can just come in and say, oh, I'm just looking for information from a friend, and they can get all kinds of resources and tools that they can use, and we're not going to tell anybody they're there. I have probably seen in the last 3 months 12 different women who wouldn't have gotten help had somebody not asked them, had somebody not handed them something, had somebody not given them a phone number. And they just reached out just with some questions at first, not necessarily disclosing that anything was going on for them, but just kind of, fishing. And, came back and came back and came back, and a couple of them are in shelter, and so it's a good thing to intervene.
Well, that explains the difference in the numbers. So victims may come forward and seek help, but not ready to report yet. They're not ready to go to law enforcement yet. So that's why you have the 555 number of people that she has served, but only 238 reports have been made. Because you can go confidentially to the crisis center to get help, and maybe they're not ready to report this time. The average is 7 times before they're actually going to report or do something about the situation. It's a tough thing. This is somebody that you've chosen to be your life partner, you may have children with. That is a really tough thing, and the shame and the guilt that's involved in being a victim, it's this dynamic that's created. It's very difficult to get out of these situations. So that's why part of the proclamation is acknowledging the important work that's done by the crisis workers, because they stick with it. They see the same people over and over again, and eventually they're hoping that something will click and the victims will decide to figure out a way to move on. For the women who are the successful women, they're kind of it's a little bit of an enigma. These are the powerful, breadwinning women who are used to taking care of everything. Well, they suffer as silent victims very often because of the stigma, that sense of, oh my gosh, I'm used to taking care of everything and suddenly I'm a failure. That's hard to recognize, but that's kind of the feelings that they're going through. So I would just encourage you in your everyday lives and the citizens of the county to ask the question, to be there and make the referrals where possible. And certainly if you see something, or if you're hearing something, say you live in an apartment and you hear something going on, call 911. Call 911, because the people who are behind those closed doors might not be willing to, and at least there can be that initial intervention.
Do you still have the cards for the bathrooms?
I do. You want some?
Yes, please.
I'll make sure you get some.
Thank you.
Okay, the Board of Supervisors recognizing October 2014 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month, whereas domestic violence touches the lives of Americans of all ages, leaving a devastating impact on women, men, and children of every background and circumstance, and whereas children who live in homes where there is domestic violence also suffer abuse or neglect at high rates, and whereas studies have found that children are most likely to intervene when they witness severe violence against a parent, which can place a child at great risk of injury or death. And whereas domestic violence calls are some of the most dangerous for law enforcement to respond to. And whereas the Resource Connection Calaveras Crisis Center provided shelter for 4 women and children victims and provided assistance with 169 domestic violence restraining orders in the past 12 months. And whereas only a coordinated community effort will put a stop to this heinous crime. Now therefore it be resolved that the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim October 2014 as Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Be it further resolved that the Board of Supervisors encourages all citizens to honor the important work done by domestic violence programs and urges active support and participation in programs to eliminate the use of personal and institutional violence against women and men. I'll entertain a motion.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Spellman, second by Supervisor Callaway. Are there any public comments on this item?
Hang in there for a second. Marty Crane. We're talking about being brave, arming ourselves with this information that our district attorney and Kelly have given us. I want to just say that with that information, we can be brave. We need to also remember that nothing changes unless somebody steps up. And it happens all over the place, all over the county, in many, many different areas. And years ago, we did not have a crisis center. We did not have this partnership between the crisis center and our district attorney. But it took 2 women saying, this is not going to stand up and start taking responsibility for it. And she rarely ever mentions this, but Bonnie Newman and a lady that I met recently named Virginia, they're the ones that went in their cars and went out and put themselves out there to say, this is not going to stand. And one-on-one, they took care of the issues as they saw them and then connected with the Sheriff's Department. So if we think that we can't step up and make that, armed with this information, take that next step, I think we need to rethink that because we can. We have the power to change it all. So thank you.
What I was going to say is, I object to Domestic Violence Awareness Month.
Do you want to turn the sign?
We know what you mean.
Okay, I was upside down. I usually am. Anyway, I object to Domestic Violence Awareness Month. The state of California passed its first legislation against domestic violence in 1980. For crying out loud, that's 35 years ago. We need to have Domestic Violence Intolerance Month. We can't put up with it any longer. It's been going on too long, and we're all aware of it. Recently, Sports Figures has brought it to the public realm. Back in 1980, the most frequent abusers in a profession were the military, law enforcement, doctors, and attorneys. They didn't include sports figures back then. I don't think in the 80s they really considered sports figures as professions, but I bet you now they'd be way up there in the top too. Seems the jobs with the highest stress, the highest focus, the highest impact suffer the highest incidence of domestic violence. And it's true, it happens to many, many, many people. In fact, I'm of the mind, and I know they don't believe this anymore, but I bet if every single person in this room were surveyed and would answer truthfully, half of us have been involved in a family that suffered from domestic violence. I know when you're in the field working domestic violence, everyone is involved in domestic violence, but it's more prevalent than we want to admit. So I would just like to say, after all of these years and all of this struggle,
we're aware we need to put our foot down and say no more, increased penalties perhaps. I know that awareness is important because some people don't know that they don't deserve to be beaten because they've been conditioned that way, and it's acceptable. So awareness is important, but even more important is intolerance of the whole situation itself, because we ain't getting any further along the line, and we're not changing the cycle from generation to generation. Thank you.
Any further public comments? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Kelly, I have this.
I just want to correct a typo. It wasn't 4 people. That was my typo. It wasn't 4 people we provide shelter for. It was 44. Thinking, wow, that's a low number.
Do we want, can we correct that and redo this?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, item number 4 is being brought to us through Cliff Edson, County Supervisor, adopting a proclamation recognizing October as ADHD Awareness Month in Calaveras County.
Thank you. And actually, it was Gary Stevens that brought this to my attention. So we appreciate that, Gary. So this month, whereas ADHD is the most common childhood behavioral disorder affecting 9% of our children, and that left untreated impairs a child's ability to succeed at school, risk being unaccepted by peers, and create distress in the family. And whereas according to epidemiological, is that it? Data? Okay. Approximately 4% to 6% of the U.S. population has ADHD. And whereas ADHD usually persists throughout a person's lifetime, and approximately 1/2 to 2/3 of the children with ADHD will continue to have significant problems as adults, thus affecting their jobs, family, and social relationships. And whereas there is a great deal of evidence that ADHD runs in families, suggesting that there is a 25% to 35% probability that more than one family member also has ADHD. And whereas clinical experience has shown that the most effective treatment for ADHD is a combination of medication, when necessary, therapy or counseling to learn coping skills and adaptive behaviors. And whereas Mind Matters, a nonprofit charitable organization based in Murphys, serves as a vital and unique treatment source for these individuals and their families in Calaveras County. We're lucky to have them. And therefore be resolved, the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors does hereby recognize the effects of ADHD on children and adults living in Calaveras County. Be it further resolved, the Board of Supervisors recognizes and commends the work of Mind Matters for their impact on the lives of families within Calaveras County. Passed and adopted. We haven't passed it yet. Passed and adopted by the Board of Supervisors of County of Calaveras, State of California, this 14th day of October 2014.
Are there, we have Dr. Ryan Thompson here with Mind Matters. Would you like to say a few words?
Hi, Hi, I'm Dr. Ryan Thompson. I'm CEO and Medical Director of Mind Matters, and I just have a half hour, right?
For you, 3 minutes.
Just checking, all right. Just thank you. I appreciate having me here, and just a moment to recognize the individuals who do struggle with ADHD. It is about 1 in 10 of the children in our county that have it, so that means out of a classroom of 30, you have 3 kids with ADHD usually, and about 1 out of 20 adults have ADHD in this county, so we offer a service for those people. It
So
doesn't just impact...
somebody in this room has it.
That means somebody in this room has a raise your hand. Somebody got it, okay. So these individuals oftentimes, most of them don't just have ADHD. Some of them, 85% will struggle with things like depression, anxiety, OCD, Tourette's syndrome, learning disabilities, things like that. And being a father of a child with ADHD and autism, I know what it was like prior to Mind Matters' existence, and that there were really no resources in the county. And so now we offer that kind of a resource for families, not just for the individual, but for the families, because anybody that's raised a child with ADHD knows it's no fun, and knows that they really struggle, and knows that there's very few places to turn for help. And so we're able to offer not just medication, which is oftentimes what you find everywhere else, but really a comprehensive approach to treating the individuals and their family, and also offering as a resource to educators and to other health professionals and to the community at large as far as information and resources for treating it. So I appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you. We're gonna take a vote on that. Are there any more public comments on this item? Supervisor, we'll take a picture.
Gary volunteers at right?
Okay, Supervisor Callaway has some comments.
Dr. Thompson's not only the CEO or CFO or both of those things, he's also the founder and the medical director of Mind Matters. And I think, as Supervisor Edson said, we're very fortunate to have you in Murphy's. You serve, though, not only Calaveras, but Amador, Tuolumne, and other places. So people in this county keep saying, well, we have to go out of county for services. Your organization brings people in. I also want to compliment Mind Matters for making it an education process for the public. The place that you've put on, the events you're at, you've sort of brought the topic out in the open for the community to discuss. And so I really compliment you and your staff of volunteers for doing that, Dr. Thomas. And you've really brought something to the county, to our children and our families that's very much needed and appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to the board.
Also, I'd like to say that I get calls from time to time from distressed parents, don't know what to do. And so I called Mind Matters and asked them if they could do an event in Valley Springs, that there was a couple of people that called me from that area. They responded immediately. They were a little afraid that they weren't going to get enough people to participate, but I think they found out that there was plenty. If you have never experienced a young person, a child with autism, ADHD, we had one come visit our house about 2 weeks ago, and boy, I tell you what, she wore me out. She wanted to go, and so I certainly appreciate the work that you do. Parents, when they have nowhere else to go, they call me. They call us. We sure appreciate you being in the
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We're going to, Dr. Thompson, Gary, we haven't officially voted yet. You might want to stick around.
It might not pass. After that speech.
So all sorts of good comments, and I echo many of them. At this point, I'll take a motion from the board.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Callaway to adopt the proclamation recognizing October as ADHD Awareness Month in Calaveras County. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary, for bringing this forward.
Thank you, Board.
Thank you. At this time, we're going to move into public comment. This is for any item of interest to the public that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of the board and is not posted on the consent or regular agenda, may be addressed during the public comment period. California law prohibits the board from taking action on any matter which is not posted on the agenda unless it is determined to be an emergency by the Board of Supervisors. If public comment is completed before the 30-minute allotted time period, the board may immediately move to the consent agenda. If public comment is not completed during the allotted time period, it will be continued at the conclusion of the regular agenda in order to provide an opportunity for the remainder of comments to be heard. So at this time, we're starting public comments at 9:40. We'll conclude at 10:10. If we have additional public comments, we'll continue them after the regular agenda. Are there any public comments today? Okay. Eeny, meeny, miny, moe. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm Mary Beth Hospital with Cal Waste. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. Dave Vaccarezza has been up here several times, and we just want to report on what we're doing here in the county regarding the services that we provide. We're the new trash and recycling service provider for the county. My recent efforts have been to go into all the schools in Calaveras County. There are several schools in this county, oh my gosh, and they're all spread all over. So it's taken me a little bit of time, but we've reached out, we've updated all of their equipment. Now there's recycling versus trash, so they're easy to identify what's out there. I've gone into every classroom to make sure that they have the tools to carry out the recycling programs that we are trying to implement here in the county. Tubs in the classroom to collect the paper. And third, to go into all the kitchens and see what they're doing regarding the recycling that's in their store closets, making sure they're capturing all of that. Also reaching out to the community and educating about recycling, the importance of recycling, and making sure that if the resident needs something, that we provide that for them. We can't ask them to increase their recycling. We can't educate about recycling if we can't provide them with what they need. So again, most of my efforts right now have been in the schools, but I look to reach out to organizations, businesses, anybody that could use us. I want to share a story here from a customer regarding our services that we provide. They emailed us this. I would like to express my gratitude to our recycle truck driver, JT, and a gentleman named Ken. My husband would like to thank them for keeping him out of the marital doghouse. Yesterday, my long-awaited carpet cleaner showed up. When it arrived, I set it on the entry floor. Later, I remembered it was the night that the recycling was to go out, so I collected some recycles, put them into a Sierra Nevada beer box, and set it on top of the carpet cleaning box. Thinking I would have my husband Bruce take it out when he took the recycling bin to the street. When Bruce came home, I said to him, "Please take out the recycles when you take out the bin." This morning, I was walking to the door. I noticed that my carpet cleaner was not in the entryway, and I asked, "Did you take my carpet cleaner to the garage?" Oh, the look of shock on his face as he yells, "Carpet cleaner?" You said it. He put it in the recycle. Yeesh, really? He didn't notice that the box was quite heavy? I mean, what did he think I was recycling? So I drove around and found JT, and he was more than kind to me. He offered that I follow him to the recycling center at the Toyon Business Park, where he dumped the entire load. Ken was there helping me sift through the contents, and we found my brand new, never been opened, unharmed carpet cleaner. So I like to think that Cal Waste also saves marriages. We're not just a trash and recycling service provider. So again, we will be here probably at every board meeting to report back on what we're doing. And if you have any questions or any way that we can help you out, let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Public comments?
Good morning. I'm Al Scallon, Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, and heeding Marty's suggestion that when you see something that needs to be done, you should be proactive, not wait for somebody else to do it. So our association is attempting to do just that. The Calaveras County Taxpayer Association, at its Board of Directors meeting of October 7th, recommended a no vote on all propositions on the November ballot. The association also urges several new future ballot proposition concepts. The first would be to repeal the fire fee and return the money to the property owners. We think that might pass. The second would be to reform the California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA, to protect property rights of all the people And finally, the association recommends a tort reform ballot measure which would discourage nuisance lawsuits designed to cripple needed development projects. The association is urging the Calaveras County Board of Supervisors, state representatives, and other groups to also call for these state ballot proposals. Thank you.
My name is Peter Race from Genelin. I'd like to start it off with something nice for a change. I experienced it on September 23rd board meeting. There was a case, Kane Papayas Trust 2002. That was item number 16. The reason I bring it up, I do stop by here once in a while. It was the first time I experienced somebody on that soapbox actually say they made a mistake. Madam Chairman, you got my respect. I don't always agree with you, but I do respect that you have enough courage, integrity to say, hey, I made a mistake. There's nothing wrong with it. I want to thank you, because when a board of its own makes mistakes, staff, and this got nothing to do with the case. I'm not going to make a judgment on the case. To me, it was chicken manure. It's ended up. And I'm looking at your face, you all agreed on it. I don't know what the answer is, how it should be. I hope somebody steps forward and help those folks out. They were sincere, and you know it. But when the board has a hard time with because of this or that, let me remind you, when your staff, when they play with tax money and they screw up, oh, no big deal. We massage the numbers instead of a loan. It's general fund. Forget it. It's only federal money, federal tax money, okay? I remember it, and I think most of you do also. When it comes to, like, public works, well, somebody didn't see it, misguided, you're going to redo it again. Somebody screwed up at taxpayers' expenses, no big deal. Now, whoever the staff you have, that your staff and whatever they do is directly related to you. It's not them, it's you. So keep that in mind in the future, you know. I wish I could just massage numbers when I report my income tax. Oh, instead of calling a loan, we're gonna call it a grant and massage it and forget it, okay? So, but that does leave an impression on you folks also. Thank you.
Any additional public comments?
Good morning, Bonnie Newman from Double Springs. I've been struggling with the articles in the paper about Lori Norton leaving, and although I understand that the paper is claiming that it was her choice and it was her decision, I'm still disturbed, and you know you're all going to be blamed anyway, no matter which way it went. But I just like to say this. If Lori Norton indeed, decided to leave, what did you all do to try and make her stay? Did you do anything? I know when Garcia was wavering, you threw some money at him.
We didn't.
Got him to stay. Gave him a free car, so when he got off work, he could drive out to the dump and pick up all the recycles and take them down to Stockton. That was nice of you to give him a car to do that, by the way. So I'm wondering what you did to try and get Lori to stay, because I'm telling you, she's the smartest one we've had yet. And maybe she didn't feel comfortable here, because I read she's from somewhere else, and she moved here without her family, so she traveled back and forth occasionally. So she was truly out of her element here. She was what I would call a stranger in a strange land, a real strange land. Maybe she didn't feel welcome here. When she came here, you all were probably main people she had interaction with. I'd like to ask you how many times a month you all invited her home for a home-cooked meal to make her feel welcome. You know, did you ever at all? I mean, once a month, once a year? Was there ever any extension of camaraderie or companionship? Because I'm thinking she was in a hotel in Angels or apartment, and what was she must have been feeling? Very isolated. Well, I don't believe she left of her own free will. It says so in the paper, and I don't care if all of you swore on a stack of Qurans. I don't think it was her choice. I think she was made to feel not welcome somehow. I know she was instituting a lot of change.
15 seconds.
When people feel threatened, sometimes they want to protect their little self-serving situations, and they will act out in retaliation. I think the community's really in bad shape because of the loss of Lori. Thank you. And I have something to hand out, too. It's not about what I was talking about. This is maybe how to save the county some money, so. It's a newspaper article. Thank you for your time.
Let's hope it works. Joe Kelly, FEMA 2014, once again. It appears that FEMA is expressing that it's in your jurisdiction by the information I provided you last time I was here. I want to provide you with some more information because I know you folks are so busy, and the previous CAO, or every CAO previous, has been too busy to look at your own codes. But let's look at them today. 1702020, effect on previous approvals, paragraph C. Any land use which was established in violation of the provisions of Ordinance 250 and its amendments, or Ordinance 945 and its amendments, shall be presumed to not be in compliance with this title, and shall be required to conform with the standards in effect at the time of discovery. Ordinance 1812, 1986. Something else. Mr. Segala talked about CEQA. 1505130, compliance with CEQA, paragraph A, the California Environmental Quality Act and the Calaveras County Environmental Review Ordinance may require the preparation and processing of environmental documents for a proposed grading project. If so required, the environmental review process must be completed before a valid grading permit can be issued by Public Works. Now let's get to the crux of the matter. That was done in 2008. None of you were here, except Ms. Callaway. She was part and parcel of this thing. She's responsible for it. 1506011, statutory authorization. The legislature of the state of California has in Government Code sections 65302, and I would suggest you read this so that you can go and look and see what you failed to do since all of you have been in office, and since Ms. Callaway has been in office since this was put into play in 2008. And then Government Code Section 65560 and 65800 conferred upon local governments the authority to adopt regulations designed to promote, now be sure to pay attention to this, public health, safety, and general welfare of its citizenry. Therefore, the Board of Supervisors of Calaveras County does hereby adopt the following floodplain management regulations. Now, let's go a little further. 1506013, statement of purpose. It is the purpose of this chapter to promote the public health, safety, and general welfare, to minimize public and private losses due to flood conditions in specific areas by legally enforceable regulations applied uniformly throughout the community to all publicly and privately owned land within flood-prone mudslide, i.e. mud flow, or flood-related erosion areas. These regulations are designed to A, protect human life and health, B, minimize expenditure of public money for costly flood control projects, C, minimize the need for rescue and relief efforts associated with flooding and generally undertaken at the expense of the general public. Now, let's look at one other one. 1506014,
Mr. Kelly?
methods of reducing flood issues.
Mr. Kelly, the time limit is up. How much more time?
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Thank you. 150614, methods of reducing flood losses. In order to accomplish its purposes, this chapter includes regulations to A, restrict or prohibit uses which are dangerous to health, safety, and property due to water or erosion hazards, or which result in damaging increases in erosion of flood heights and velocities. B, require that uses vulnerable to floods, including facilities which will serve such uses, be protected against flood damage at the time of initial construction. C, control the alteration of natural floodplains, stream channels, or natural protective barriers which help accommodate or channel flood waters. C, control filling, grading, dredging, and other development which may increase flood damage. And E, prevent or regulate the construction of flood barriers which will unnaturally divert floodwaters or which may increase flood hazards in other areas. There you have it in a nutshell. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. Any additional public comments?
Kathy Zancanella from the airport. And just on a lighter note here, Lori Norton was a wonderful lady, very capable, and her decisions were her decisions. We have a very capable person taking her place now, and I think we all need to stand behind. And thank you, guys.
Thank you. Any additional public comments? Okay, I'll close this section of the meeting, and we'll move on to our consent agenda. And our consent agenda items are expected to be routine and non-controversial. They will be acted upon by the board at one time without discussion. Any board member, staff member, or interested party may request removal of an item from the consent agenda for later discussion. Are there any items on consent that the board wishes to remove? Anything from departments? From the public?
6 and 12, please.
6 and 12?
Thank you.
Mr. Race?
9, please.
And 9. Any other items? Okay, from the consent, we have items 6, 9, and 12 are removed. I'll entertain a motion on the balance.
So moved. Second?
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson, to approve the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 4-0 with Supervisor Spellman absent. We'll move to item 6 with the assessor, adopting a resolution authorizing the board chair to sign the application for open space subvention payment of $137,965.21 from the state of California under the Open Space Subvention Act. The question on this item?
Joe Kelly, it's my understanding from past that there's about 139,000 acres in the Williamson Act. That's what this, I believe the subvention funding is all about and payment is all about. What I would like to know is the quantity of and value of prime versus non-prime ag land, so that we can have an understanding of, because there's supposed to be a difference in pricing or payment value per acre, prime and non-prime. So I'd like to get that understood. There's also the payment values. And then how soon will the county realize if credit, payment, or nothing happens? And then will it be brought back to the board so that we will know? In other words, transparency of this issue. Because it is rather a large issue, considering I think it's $300,000 and some odd that the county over collected, and it needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you.
Peter Reyes, General Inn. It's more like a request for education. If the money is, I mean, I know it's campaign time and election time. It's nice to make promises and make look like you have an effort. The source of the funds and the outlook of source of those funds, how realistic it is, that's for one thing. And if the state doesn't come across with the money, and those folks signed up for this Williamson Act, and if the state doesn't come across with the money, Are those folks have an option to pull out? Is there any consequences when they pull out? Are there going to be back taxes going to be collected? If the state not going to come across, and I believe there's some mention that's going to be from a Clean Air Act, AB 32 or something. But if the state doesn't come across with a dole, and those folks signed up for it, is there going to be any consequences, as tax consequences going to be to them? Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? Yeah, we have our assessor, Leslie Davis, here. Leslie, can you answer some of these questions?
Thank you, an opportunity to pick up a red ribbon. Mr. Kelly asked how soon we will know if we get the money. We know now there is no money in the state budget for the subvention. This is a required annual report to the Department of Conservation. The governor, actually it was then Governor Schwarzenegger, removed the money from the budget in 2009. Governor Brown has not put it back in, nor has the legislature. There will be no money coming based on submission of the report. Nonetheless, the report continues to be a requirement by the State Department of Conservation, and that is why we go through this exercise every year. They use it to report to the state legislature the status of lands under Conservation Act. To answer Mr. Kelly's question about how many acres and how many dollars are in prime versus non-prime, there are 445.2 acres that are prime in Calaveras County. There are 135,739.21 non-prime. The total dollars are for the prime acreage, $2,226, and for the non-prime, $135,739.21. And that's because it's $1 per acre on the non-prime, Mr. Kelly. Mr. Race asked if the state doesn't come across with money, are the folks who are in Williamson Act, do they have an option to pull out, back out, or have back taxes? This does not apply to the property owners in Williamson Act. This is a state subvention that we apply for. We know we're not going to get the money. It is not charged to Williamson Act contract holders. Did any board member have a question?
No, I would just like to note, though, that this particular report that's being filed is also available to review online in great detail, listing the properties and the number of acreage and that sort of thing.
It doesn't list all of the properties.
Okay. So which properties does it list?
If
The ones in the,
Yeah, if you turn to the last couple of pages, it lists the parcels that are newly enrolled. There are 2 parcels newly enrolled, and then it lists the parcels that were non-renewal that have expired and are no longer part of the system.
okay. So that's what's required in this report then?
That's
to
what's
file?
required in this report.
Thank you. Any additional questions on this item? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt the resolution authorizing the board chair to sign the application for open space subdivision payment of $137,965.21 from the state of California under the Open Space Subvention Act. All those in favor? Aye. Oppose? Motion carries 4-0 with Supervisor Spellman absent. Item number 9, brought to us by Public Works, approve a resolution adopting the traffic order number 315, establishing a no parking zone on Pine Drive, road number 822, at its junction with the Arnold Rim Trail Cedar Center Bikeway connection in Arnold. A question on this item?
Yes, ma'am. We only talk about Mickey Mouse money, $580, not a big deal, but there's a principle involved over here. You base it on, I mean, I'm sure their time costs more than $508, okay, for one thing. I mean, it's nice, thoughtful, so on, etc. I love it. There's no traffic study, no environmental study. But what bugs me, okay, and we have a public works that's supposed to be nice, engineering, knowledgeable people. They base this request, may be utilized by motorists, possibly undermines the safety and functionality. Folks, Hans Christian Andersen died a long time ago. Are we paying people for nice stories? I mean, you have professionals working for you. And how in the world can you get away with? Maybe, could be. Are we paying for, a high school kid can come up with excuses for it, okay? Public Works got you in a lot of trouble in prior years. And a $580, it's not a big deal, I know, not to you and not to anybody else. And maybe it goes for a good cause. But how can you accept something like that from your staff, spending their time and knowledge and expertise and geniusness to come up with a crap like this and accept it? Somebody better shape up, folks, really, because that's your staff. It's not them. It's your staff that you allow something like that. Maybe environmental stuff you don't need. Maybe utilize safety and functionality. Come on, folks. You want to change the no parking signs, change it. I believe your time's worth something. Their time's definitely worth something. And we, the taxpayers, are paying for this crap. Thank you.
Any other comments on this item? Mr. Packinger, you want to address the comments?
Good morning.
Good morning.
The location of the proposed parking signs are at a turning circle on Pine Drive. There currently was constructed the Arnold connection for the bikeway and pedestrian path. The idea behind the placement of the signs was to make sure that there wouldn't be vehicles parked on either side of this entrance on Pine Drive, so that any users of the path would be easily visible by other vehicles. The process of looking into the applicability of putting up the no parking signs is in accordance with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. Every sign that we put up has to be in conformance with the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. So we go through that process to make sure that the signs are appropriate. And then we go ahead and submit the traffic order to the board for approval. That is the process.
The process, thank you. Any other questions on this item? I entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to approve a resolution adopting traffic order number 315, establishing a no parking zone on Pine Drive, road number 822 at its junction with the Arnold Rim Trail Cedar Center Bikeway connection in Arnold. All those in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Motion carries 4-0 with Supervisor Spellman absent. Item number 12, coming from the Administrative Office, make, quote, public purpose finding and approve the sublease by San Andreas Recreation and Parks District of Alex Quinones Community Park Field, A, to the Calaveras Unified School District for $400 annually plus 50% of any necessary irrigation improvements to the park. And this item was pulled. Is there a question?
Joe Kelly, are we in a drought? Question 2, define any necessary irrigation improvements to the park. And 3, how much water is used on this park field? If we're in a drought or not in a drought. Thank you.
Any other questions on this item? So the Administrative Office, is Mary Rose able to answer?
Mary Rose Rutikanga, analyst in the Administrative Office. The improvements that would be needed in the park are improvements needed in the actual Pug Ugly water, groundwater well. Any type of improvements that would be needed would be have to use in that water well. There are times in which during the year the well runs dry, and when that non-potable water is not able to be utilized, then potable water from the Calaveras Public Utility District is then have to be used, and that is the water that is discussed in this lease agreement. Any water that is used that is billed to the Rec and Park, 50% of that water usage would have to then be billed to also the Calaveras Unified School District. We don't actually have record of how much water usage is actually used, but it is noted that when the school district is utilizing that field, obviously the usage of the water has increased, and so that is why the Rec and Park District has asked the school district to pay 50% of the water usage.
Okay. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to make public purpose finding and approve the sublease of San Andreas Recreation and Parks District of the Alex Quinones Community Park Field A to the Calaveras Unified School District for $400 annually, plus 50% of any necessary irrigation improvements to the park. Supervisor Edson has a comment before the vote.
So as far as the watering the field goes, 2 years ago they did some studies on it to try to minimize the watering on the field. Before that, those sprinklers were like going wild, and there was a lot of usage. So they've minimized it as much as possible to keep at least the turf healthy. The other thing is the Plug Ugly is a well that actually you can see right down to the bottom of that thing. It's but I've seen it go dry twice, and largely because of a failure in the irrigation system. One time was out here, right out here, when they popped a line out here. Nobody knew what it was. Right here on Mountain Ranch Road, and there was a 30-foot water stream for a little while. Well, that's what happened. And so, there's old pipes in the ground around here, and but anyhow, so they repaired that. They got it fixed. And there were some other issues around pumps because it burned up a pump and some other electrical stuff while that happened. Then there's a tank that sits up on top of that hill above the park. That tank is a big old cement tank. I think it's around, I don't know how many gallons it is, but it's pretty darn big. And it has sometimes it needs some maintenance as well. So the park's recognizing that the high school uses, a portion of all of this, of the park system up there. Then they felt that, I'm assuming they felt that the high school should get a fair share of what they need to pay for the maintenance of it. And in previous years, it was just the park, and that did that. And of course, their funds are depleting or getting smaller and smaller too, since our tax base is. And so everybody's scrambling for, to share things, to share costs in order to keep our assets as healthy as possible. So I'm pretty sure that's what this is about, and I agree with what Parks is, the agreement that they're making with the school.
I would also add that this agreement has been signed off by the San Andreas Recreation and Parks District in August of 22nd of 2014 and approved by the Calaveras County School District Board on the 2nd of September. So this is a finalization at this part for the board.
And they have a working relationship, which is really good. I'm glad to see it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Spellman absent. All right, thank you. Moving on to our regular agenda. Item number 13 comes to us from Planning. The Planning Commission recommends that the Board of Supervisors find that the project is exempt from CEQA under Government Code Section 65457 and pass a motion authorizing the chair to sign an ordinance extending the expiration of the Calaveras County Club specific plan, also known as Saddle Creek Development Agreement, for a period of 5 years to June 13th, 2019. We have our Planning Director, Peter Maurer, here to go over this item.
Thank you. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the board. The agenda item pretty much speaks for itself. This would be an additional 5-year extension. One 5-year extension was granted about 5 years ago, so it would add a total of 5 years to this development agreement. We reviewed the agreement. There didn't seem to be anything in it that would would harm the county. Don't see any disadvantage in extending this agreement. There are, it's about a third of the way developed. 300 and some odd houses constructed out of about, I think it was 1,600 that was approved for the project. There were some issues raised at the Planning Commission regarding CEQA analysis. We feel comfortable in the exemption that it applies in this case. There has not been any specific issues raised that would lead us to go back and revisit the CEQA analysis. So with that, I would forward the Planning Commission's recommendation that you adopt this ordinance and extend the agreement for an additional 5 years. Are there any questions?
I do have one. So in reviewing the information and a little bit about the Planning Commission, my understanding is nothing has changed to this agreement per se. It's just the extension of a 5-year timeframe to that. Would that?
That's correct.
Summarize?
Yes.
So no.
Just additional time is all.
Okay, so no special considerations one way or the other
No.
on any of the items within the developer's agreement?
That's correct.
Okay. All right. Any other questions from the board? Supervisor
Mr.
Callaway?
Maurer, what would happen at the end of 5 years? Would they entitled to another extension?
It's a little unclear in the law. There was, when the agreement was extended last time, it was stated as part of the action by the board that the agreement could be extended for another 5 years at that time, and that's this 5-year extension. I would think after 25 years that it's sufficient time to move forward with the project. We have had economic downturn, and so there's probably good reason to extend it at this point in time. It would not change anything with regard to the land use. The specific plan would still remain in effect. All of the subdivision maps that have been approved would still be valid. So the loss of the development agreement or the expiration of the development agreement wouldn't change anything for the actual development of Saddle Creek. It just, the agreement itself expires that essentially says we cannot change anything that's subject to that. So if for some reason the board decided, that's not a very good plan, we want to update the plan, we want to do something different out there, that would give the county the ability to do that. Under this agreement, we're sort of locked into, we lock ourselves into place with what's approved, but it's been approved. There doesn't seem to be any reason why we wouldn't want to continue with that project the way it is.
I mean, I understand all this up through the next 5 years. That's not, but at the end of the 5 years, the development agreement
It would expire
would
unless they applied for another extension and we agreed to extend it. Typically,
we could make changes, though, to the development agreement at that time?
we could if we wanted to, yes.
We could do it.
And-
Everything, you could decide not to extend it, and you could decide that there are changes you want to make. We couldn't find any reason to make those changes at this point in time.
Understand.
So it would be up to the county and the board to decide whether to extend it further, to change it, to let it expire.
Okay, thank you.
Any other further questions from the board? Any public comments on this item?
Good morning, I'm Dave Haley. I represent Castle and Cook on the Saddle Creek development. We request that the board approve our 5-year extension. We've been under development for 20 years. Half of that time, or 10 years, have been economic downturns, 8 of which has been very serious national economic downturns. Yet, through that period of time, we've completed 50% of our anticipated lot development. We've completed the 18 of 27 holes of golf course, all of the amenities, including the clubhouse and the lodge bungalows, which is our rental program and sports facility. We've also completed all of our off-site mitigation programs, some of which we exceeded the requirements. And so we respectfully request an extension so we can continue with the development of Saddle Creek. We think it is beneficial to our county. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alice Gallant Taxpayer Association. We concur, and we think that the extension should be allowed. Thank you.
Peter Reyes, gentlemen. I have a couple of questions, and I'm sure you all read the whole packet over here, but something caught my eyes that I hope you consider, and maybe doing some changes. On page 193 at the bottom, we talk about eminent domains, and both on 193, and then you come down to the one underneath it, that's really bugged the hell out of me, folks. Eminent domain, transferring the eminent domain and so on. But there's one little section on, I believe it's the paragraph after that, the section 2.14. Upon request of the developer, agrees to exercise or transfer to the developer the power of eminent domain. Folks, not that I don't trust these folks. They got my sympathy and support to build. I'm all for it. But I do not want to see eminent domain power in any developer's hand. If you, as a board, want to use eminent domain for a good cause, all for it. School, hospital, whatever, okay? But folks, no eminent domain power in any form or for any reason to the developer. They in it for the money, I respect it. But I don't want his power putting a pressure on a fellow property owner down the street for their benefit. Just the principle of it. You can tell me all about legal definition one way or another. But that's, I respect your right for eminent domain, and I support you, and I support this development. There's a lot of questionable things. I mean, I'd give him credit for sticking with it. But no way do I want to see my elected official turn over eminent domain power to any developer. Thank you.
I don't read where the developer has eminent domain. It's the county can exercise eminent domain if it's necessary at the request of the developer.
Right.
So the eminent domain action still rests with the county. And what we're saying that if we do, then the developer has to pay for that, which is a little bit different than what
Okay,
you're
now if
saying.
you fold the page up a little bit, the next paragraph, which is section 2.14, that's the section that bugs me. Upon request of the developer, agrees to exercise or transfer to the developer the power of eminent domain. I mean, my English is kind of bad and my comprehension is slow and I'm just a dumb foreigner.
I thought you were a United States citizen, Mr.
Oh, yes, ma'am, for a long time, but I'm just so dumb or foreigner, I know nothing. But exercise or transfer to the developer the power of eminent domain. Am I reading something wrong, or am I misspelling or pronouncing something wrong? Thank you.
For the roadways.
I don't care what it is for.
House of Gallant Taxpayer Association on that item. It seems like the wording needs to be changed, and I think the intention is probably for the county to retain that power. And by wording it, transferring to the developer, it's pretty clear that that is a mistake.
Joe Kelly, unfortunately here in America, words do have meaning. I read Mr. Infacino's 18-page document. I was kind of, well, I really enjoyed reading where he referred, I think about 4 times, to the issue of the previous planning director.
And Public Works, too.
And Public Works. He didn't do that with Public Works 4 times, but once, I think. And then I read Mr. Haley's 10-page. And wow, that was a battle of words. That Mr. Infacino, he has my admiration. He is tough. And Mr. Haley came back with a lot of good information. One thing, and then Mr. Haley brought up that they've been dealing with this for 20 years, so that would mean either about 1984 it came into play. So what I haven't read in here is anything about Highway 4. Now we know we're getting the Wagon Trail project, which is a transitional highway from when it goes out of Copper, a wide two-lane, down to a wagon trail two-lane. Now it's going to be expanded into a conventional two-lane. But yet the lawsuit that the county endured in 1984, or general plan time of that, might have been a little bit before that, that says Highway 4 has to be a 4-lane highway. Who's paying for that? I know Caltrans is not going to do it, because when that the district director for Caltrans was here on the Valley Springs Auto Parts store, he made comment to me afterwards when I said, where's the 4-lane highway? He said, we don't have the money. So what's the deal here? We have lawsuits that have no meaning? That we're going to get something that is well below standard of what has been ordered by a court to be done? Who has the jurisdiction, Caltrans or the court, to enforce that? I think Caltrans was told that it has to do it. But that's my concern. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. Peter, can you address some of the questions that were presented?
With regard to the eminent domain provision, it does read exactly that. It's not something that I would advocate that we put into any future development agreements. We have the right to use eminent domain when we need to. I don't know at this point, and I guess I would defer to council, whether if you want to make an amendment to strike that clause from this, if we could do that at this hearing today, or we would need to continue it and re-advertise for change to the development agreement rather than just the extension. So I don't know procedurally what's the best course of action to do that, but that does seem a little bit odd to me that we would have that in an agreement from 20 years ago.
Isn't it a fait accompli, though? They've already done all the road work. This has to do with roads.
There is a second access that is still required. They are proposing to change that, and part of the negotiation that we're into right now is whether or not they have sufficient right-of-way to accomplish that proposed second change of access. So this could actually become an issue. And frankly, I'm not that familiar with the specifics of Highway 4 and the ultimate design that Caltrans has on that. My understanding was that the EIR that was prepared looked at the traffic impact of this project, and mitigation was addressed, and sufficient fees and improvements were made to accommodate the impact of this project on both the Highway 4 as well as local roads in the area.
I would just like to comment on this section. I do agree that the language is not desirable, and it would not be something that I would recommend in the future, but it does allow for, essentially, the county agrees to pursue eminent domain if it's necessary, or transferring that. Quite honestly, if we ever went to, if that was something that needed to be pursued, it would be our recommendation for the county to institute it. I don't think that it's proper for the county to actually delegate that to anyone. It's a county function. And so
within our power, is it?
I honestly don't believe that it's even something that is proper for the county to do. So I would, if it was something that was necessary, that the county would exercise the power under this rather than transfer it, and that would still be within the terms of the agreement. If the board desired to strike that, I don't think that it would require us to come back, because ultimately it's not materially affecting the language of this agreement because there's still the opportunity or the option for the county to exercise eminent domain if necessary and requested. So it would be up to the board, you know, if you want to strike it, certainly that's something that can be considered. It would be something that would have to be mutually agreeable. If not, quite honestly, the way it stands, I don't see that it would affect the agreement in the next 5 years because if they're requested, if eminent domain is requested, then the county would pursue that rather than transferring that or delegating that authority to the developer.
Seems like this is a good point to clean it up, so let's just go ahead and clean it up. I mean, I have to agree with Peter here.
You don't need temptation, folks. Who knows what I'm sitting here without that violation?
Again, I'm Dave Haley with Castle and Cook. A comment that Peter made on our Saddle Creek second entrance, that is an on-site, not an off-site requirement. We do have a stem that is entitled to do that second entrance out to Little John Road. What we are going to come before you in the future is to relocate that. We think it's a much better condition for the community of Copperopolis. As to the eminent domain, we have no objections to amending that provision. We have not in the past had an eminent domain. Obviously, we do not have any desire to do that in the future, so we would have no objection. Thank you.
Thank you. So at this point, what I hear is that we could strike it from this agreement, that both sides are agreeable to that at this point.
So I would recommend then we strike the phrase in section 2.14 or transfer to developer, comma. That be struck from that agreement.
Okay, any other public comments?
I kind of jumped this morning when I read that Dave was going to speak. They're asking for a secondary entrance into Saddle Creek. Could you be more specific,
Jane,
Dave, as to where that's going to go? I mean, where is this secondary entrance? Because Debbie asked if you have changed any of the plans now since you submitted your original ones, and I personally feel that you have. However, I did not see the original plans. If I understand where your secondary is going, you are going to approach us for a lot line adjustment in order to do this. I would like to know where our association stands concerning a lot line adjustment for them to do a road which does not benefit my association, but they are requesting land or a lot line association on land that is in our association. So I don't know legally, and nothing was specified as to where this second entrance is going. My other comment, it is, in our Copperopolis plan, Dave was asked to take the traffic off of Little John in the future and put it out to 4. And I have yet to see where that goes. All Dave is doing is the traffic will still be on Little John. So I don't know if I'm looking at this wrong, but I'd like a little more clarification as to, like, what is our association's rights should this come about? And have the plans been changed?
Okay.
Before you okay the originals.
Can you, just for the record, to state your name, and are you representing yourself? or the-
Jane Everett, and I am on the board of the Copper Cove Association, but I'm representing myself right now because I am just elected and I am not familiar, but I have read our CC&Rs and our bylaws, and from what I see, there might be a conflict of interest here.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Would that impact this?
So I'm thinking, yeah, so Peter, can you clarify, today on the agenda is an extension of a 5-year term to this agreement?
That's correct. There is no, we have a draft proposal that we're processing. It's not on your agenda today that proposes to change the second access to the Saddle Creek project, but that will necessitate much more analysis and separate public hearing. We're working with the homeowner association and the
So this
residents
agreement
here.
isn't pro or con
It
on
does
any
not affect
kind
that
of
in any way.
secondary access? It's just,
It carries forward what was previously approved. To
Okay.
change it would require a subsequent action.
and that's
that
what
would be
is,
subject to public hearing.
that's what's coming down in the future?
Yes.
There's a proposal, is it with planning now,
Yes.
or is it just, okay?
Yes.
So that would be something to consider, a different public hearing process, that way homeowner groups, others can comment at that time about that specific project?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. So what we're talking about earlier is this particular agreement and striking that language in regards to the eminent domain from a developer's, not perspective, but a developer's request.
Clarify that question.
Okay, so we're striking that language that removes the developer from having power of eminent domain.
That
Yes.
is what was
Okay.
proposed, and it appears that the other party would be
Agreeable to
amenable to
that.
that.
Okay. Okay, I think that clarifies. And Jane, I think that clarifies. So it's a different issue, a different public hearing, and it'll be fleshed out during that process.
Yeah, I just want to make a further comment. I concur that what we're asking for now is an extension for the existing plan concept. And if we come back and we are going through a process we think it's beneficial to everybody to change that, but that is a future thing. And I am scheduled for going before the Copper Cove Association Board of Directors Thursday evening at their board meeting to go over that. So Mrs. Everett could attend if she's on the board. So that is scheduled. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, any further comments or questions about this particular item, which is an extension of 5 years to the Saddle Creek Plan Developer Agreement and striking the language in regards to eminent domain from the developer's arena?
Transferring authority.
Transferring authority, back to the county.
Madam Chair, you have
Yes.
no problem with this?
I
Your
don't.
district?
I don't. It's, there's lots of moving parts in this agreement, and I know that some of these will be addressed in the future, so.
Also move.
Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Spellman, which is authorizing the chair to sign an ordinance extending the expiration of the Calaveras County Club Specific Plan, also known as Saddle Creek Development Agreement, for a period of 5 years to June 13th, 2000, I've scribbled it out, 19, with the amendment of striking the transfer of, thank you.
Or
Transfer of eminent domain to the county's arena.
The
Okay.
motion was as amended.
As amended, thank you. Any further comments or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Item number 14, thank you, Peter. Item number 14, brought to us by Human Resources, introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance to ratify the salary and benefits for the Calaveras County Sheriff. And Shirley?
Thank you, Supervisor Pound and Chair Pound. This is introduction and waiving of an ordinance. State law requires that the board establish elected officials' salary by ordinance. In January 2013, the board adopted ordinance 3018 approving salary and benefit changes for elected officials that were consistent as normal with agreements with SEIU. However, it excluded the elected sheriff, referencing a prior action from 2004 that was specific to the prior sheriff. So this item is to correct that oversight, to affirm the current salary and benefits the sheriff is receiving, and to ensure that the sheriff receives the future negotiated COLA. It does not change his benefits or salary in any manner, and his salary and benefits as he currently states is in the current budget for 14-15.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
So this is in keeping with the agreement we made to tie the sheriff in with the sheriff management.
Basically, yes.
Supervisor Spellman?
I've been asking for quite some time to see the board adopt an ordinance that applies to the supervisor pay. And I haven't had that made available to me, so.
I can get
Talk
that.
about what, you know, what it entails and what it is, but I've never seen it.
I'd be
In
horrible.
4 years, so
I can forward that to you this afternoon, Supervisor Spellman.
that'd be great. I knew I could count on you, sure.
Any public comments on this item?
I voted for other people.
Any public comments on this item?
Joe Kelly, I would like to express something on the last vote. It said it was a 5-0 vote.
Yes.
And Mr. Spellman voted, and he wasn't even here for most of the hearing. Now, on to this issue. What I would like to know is, would somebody please explain whether this is hourly, which was stated as a $65 plus an hour hourly wage, or if it's a salary, as is stated in this ratify the salary, because I see it in many places, to include the board stuff. It's an hourly wage, and then you've come up with a monthly or annual salary. So which is it? And what I would like to see is the process of this, also that this process be, this ordinance will be directed to the office of sheriff rather than the elected individual in the future, if that is, or unless that's what you're proposing today, because this was previously with Dennis Downham's name on it. So, but this has been bothering me for a long time, as I see this dollar amount per hour, and then I see something else as a salary, and so such as the previous CAO's $168,000 salary, annual salary. So, you know, clear the confusion for us, make it transparent so we know what's going on, because if it's a $65 an hour, does that mean he works 8 hours a day? If he gets a call out after 8 hours, that he goes overtime? If he stays beyond the overtime, he gets double time? What is it? This is what I'm concerned about. Are you following the union's rules? Are you following what rules? Thank you. And I would like that addressed on the last issue about Mr. Spellman. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item?
If I could address Mr. Kelly's questions. The reason the hourly rate is put into the ordinance, and it is specific to the office of sheriff, not to a specific sheriff, is that the base rates for all classifications in the county require on the salary grade table for our payroll system an hourly rate. However, if you are an elected official or an exempt employee, you are paid 2,080 hours in a calendar year. And so to get the annual salary, it would be 2,080 times the base hourly rate.
And that's, I think, if I recall, part of the California labor law to specify it that way as well. Any other further comments or questions on this item? Any public comments? Okay, so at this time, we have introduced and waived the first reading of the ordinance. I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to introduce and waive the first reading of an ordinance to ratify the salary and benefits for the Calaveras County Sheriff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, item number 15, Human Resources, adopting a resolution authorizing changes to the position control list for the District Attorney's Office for fiscal year 2014-15, effective November 29, 2014. Shirley?
Again, on September 23rd, the board approved the grant for the Reduced Impaired Driving Program, and that is a federal grant. It runs from October 1st, 2014 through September 30th, 2015. When the board approved that, there was changes to the grant that allowed funding for a deputy DA2, which is a higher cost position than the limited term deputy district attorney 1 position that was previously funded by the grant. So the district attorney moved one of her deputy district attorney 2s into the grant budget and moved the limited term back to the district attorney's budget. That person has tendered their resignation, and she would like to go out and recruit for that position. In order to do so, it needs to be changed from limited term to permanent, because the funding attached to it is no longer attached to it. She has current salary savings from the grant picking up a larger portion or a higher cost position, and then in her current budget. And if District Attorney, you would like to add anything to that?
Good morning again, Barbara Uke, District Attorney. Shirley covered it probably better than I can because of some of the technicalities. When we did the switch, the salary savings from the more expensive employee actually prevented a layoff of the paralegal, that is the support person for the grant. This was due to a change in the intention of the grant funding. And I view this as a technicality, and if we aren't able to make this change, what will happen is I will lose an attorney in my office. We will still have the general funds, but we won't have the body. So I'm hoping that the board will see that and approve what I think is really a technicality, because if you don't, then you're effectively reducing the staff of my office. So.
Okay. Any other questions?
I understand what you're doing. And you saw my email, my question. But we have then a grant paying for somebody who won't be doing grant work, but you'll have a DA1 or assistant or deputy doing the work when you recruit?
No. The grant is paying for the Deputy DA2 and 20% of the support person for all the outreach. The grant recognized all the great outreach work that we were doing. Because of the resignation and what would have been a lag time without an attorney, if I just recruited for the Deputy DA1, it would be at least 3 or 4 months before we had somebody. The grant recognized the importance of filling that position right away and having someone who is capable of doing it, someone who is experienced enough to do what needs to be done with the work of RID. So we moved the more experienced attorney, which is a permanent position, he's been in my office for many, many years, over to the grant funding.
And that Deputy District Attorney will have to do the work for the grant, otherwise they wouldn't be eligible.
Correct.
He's actually doing the work that the Deputy District Attorney one was previously doing for the grant.
That was my concern, if we were grant audited, that we didn't.
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any public comments on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt a resolution authorizing, motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Edson, to adopt a resolution authorizing changes to the position control list for the District Attorney's Office for fiscal year 2014-15, effective November 29, 2014. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 16, AB 109, approve CCP spending plan adjustment to allow the District Attorney's Office to purchase a case management system, as well as adjustments to the District Attorney and CIP budgets. This item will require a 4/5 vote of the board. Who is going to present this item? It's a joint effort.
It is a joint effort. Barbara Uke, District Attorney.
Sam Leach, Chief Probation Officer.
Okay. I think.
Ladies first.
Oh, I don't usually get called a lady, so thank you. I think to really understand what's going on here and why we're very excited about it is you need to understand a little bit of the history and how this came about. First of all, we did receive a CCP support for a position a couple years ago. It was the CCP program coordinator position, and the intent of that position was basically threefold. It was to perform 3 different functions. One was data collection from my office. Data is extremely important in the change with AB 109. Everything's about data and data collection, data mining, to figure out the effectiveness of the programs. Was AB 109 a good thing? Are we really reducing recidivism? Are resources being spent wisely? So data collection, up front was very important, and it's becoming more and more important. Would you agree?
Absolutely.
Okay. So the position was part to get data from my office because, in case you hadn't heard, my case management system doesn't allow for a collection of data. So anyway, the other part of it was for victim services. With realigned defendants came realigned victims. Victims of defendants who used to be able to go to prison were serviced by the Office of Victims Survivors' Rights. I don't think I have that title right. However, it was the state agency that provided the services to victims of defendants who were in prison. And of course, under AB 109, a lot of defendants can't go to prison anymore. Where do they go? They go to our jail under the 1170 sentencing. These are the but-fors, as we used to call them early on. But for AB 109, they'd be in prison. These are the 1170s. So these victims are no longer being serviced by anyone. Part of the evidence-based practices and attempts to address recidivism is a prong called restorative justice, and that deals with making defendants recognize the impact of victims and making victims whole. So a victim component surely fits squarely within the goals of AB 109. I believe it's 1229 subdivision B3 mentions restorative justice. The other prong of the position, as it was intended, was to facilitate the exchange and flow of information between all of the partners involved in AB 109, with probation, my office, the sheriff's office. The idea being that through the robust exchange of information and understanding of what each group was trying to do, we could support the programs instead of my office acting within a vacuum. Of course, as you know, I do feel my office is the center of the justice system. But anyway, we do our work in a vacuum, in a way. We get pieces of information from different sources, but in order to really be a full partner in the shift in building the new community corrections system for the county, we did feel it was important to have a very robust exchange of information and a method to do that. So that was my brainchild for this position. We did try to recruit for it. We were unsuccessful. So here we are down the road, and we do not have those three very important, what I believe are very important. The CCP did believe they were important enough to go along with my brainchild for this position. Those three things are not being done. They're not being done. So this summer, Rebecca Callan notified me that we had $26,000 in SLEFS funding that we had to spend this year. With that, my staff decided to look into, hey, can we finally deal with this case management system problem that we've had? And of course, we cannot do that for $26,000. It's not going to get us very far. So I approached the CCP with the idea of taking some of the salary savings that we've had for the CCP coordinator position and applying that to a data collection system, a new case management system that would allow for the type of data mining and data collection that we've been unable to do. Using the money from the CCP and the $26,000 SLEFS money and putting that together, we do believe we'll be able to take on a new case management system. I'm hoping it'll come in for under that, but it might not. We do believe we can find a system that will come in under or about that cost. Now, part of the money is for staff time. I do not have the capacity to take on such a huge project, doing the RFP, working with all the partners that we have to work with to acquire a system that is going to really take us forward and really allow us to do the type of data mining that we need to do to make it worthwhile. I just don't want to take on a new system for the purposes of taking on a new system. It's got to be something that's going to work and work well. So the $13,400 of the total 106, which is the 80 plus the 26 will be for my administrative assistant, who was reduced to 60% this fiscal year. The balance of the year, 40% of her time for the balance of the year is $13,400. I'm hopeful that she can do it with 40% of her time coming back to the office, devoted to this project of getting through the RFP, acquiring the new case management system, and then transitioning into the new case management system. We will have to continue to maintain our current case management system. We're not going back in history and re-entering all the information into the new system, but we need to start somewhere, and starting somewhere so that we can start looking at the impacts of AB 109, recidivism rates, and certain data that we can only get from looking at my data, which is the impacts of prosecution practices, and because of AB 109 and what impact that may have on recidivism. The partners that my office will be working with in the RFP and deciding what's going to be the best for my office and for the CC purposes is, of course, admin with TSD, the Sheriff's Office, Angels Camp Police Department, the court, who is also getting their own new case management system, probation, and the CCP, administrative analyst. The choice to not do this is that I will continue to recruit to find somebody who can do this by hand, resulting in a lot of redundancy, perhaps, taking the information out of my antiquated system and re-entering it into a new system, counting files by hand, counting results by hand, and then shipping that information to the CCP administrative analyst to then do something else with it. So I think when you look at it, it's a win-win for sure. And it's an opportunity to maximize the one-time funding that we do have through the SLAFS money. Now, we will have to regroup and figure out what we're going to do about the realigned victims and victim services. One issue is that for the 1170s that are currently sitting in jail, no one is collecting restitution for the victims in that. So we've already had a couple conversations about what can we do about that. I think that the current administrative analyst, who is very sharp with computers and program, he's smiling in the back right there, that I'm hopeful that he can come up with something, because it will take an effort working mostly with the court, I think, and the jail to figure out how to get that restitution where it needs to go.
So I have a question. So what we're hearing is some reorganization of how you can pull these monies and look at getting a database system to track a lot of information for a lot of different partners. So what you're looking for is that allotment of money to kind of budget transfers to get that pool of money to go out and get this system. Is that correct?
Correct. It's a case
right.
management system
Right.
for my office, because right
Okay.
now we have no ability to collect any data.
Okay.
Data is basically the name of the game as far as AB 109 goes, and we have been a void. We've been this little black hole, if you will,
Right.
that we can't get any data out
So
of.
right now, you haven't even started the RFP process.
No.
So this is a chunk of change that you think is going to be enough to get what you're looking for in this project?
We did look because of the $26,000 that we had. We said, oh, what can we do with this? How much does it cost? We have no idea how much it costs. We didn't even have $100 before, now we have 26. Is it
Okay.
possible to do this? So we contacted our current provider. There's all different vendors that send us emails saying, hey, we've got this new thing. If you've got money, we can come in and do this new case management system for you. So my staff did reach out and contact a few of the vendors to see what the capacity is and how much it was going to cost. Now, obviously, $26,000 was not enough. So we feel very confident that with the funding of the $26,000 plus the $80,000, we will be able to accomplish it, and we should be able to accomplish it this year, which will give us a starting place. And it's our case management system that we believe that we can do the data mining with.
So what I've learned so far in 18 months, purchasing systems, is that I would ask that you look at all the players that need to be involved, but probably most importantly, our tech services department. And then as you go out through this process, looking at those reoccurring charges that tend to come back year after year to help maintain such a system. Because I find if the systems aren't maintained, at some point, they're of no value if we don't do the upgrades to software and things along that line. So while I can appreciate the effort of this is the pool of money that we have now, it's kind of looking on down the line too of how to best manage and maintain that system. But I think to get a fully integrated system of sorts, whether it's just within your office or, you know, the outside partners, I think it's really important to involve Tech Services Department in this endeavor.
Yes, and thank you for bringing up actually the ongoing cost. There is an ongoing annual cost, of course, and I have a commitment from the CCP to fund that ongoing cost, because what it turns out is that, at least one of the vendors we're looking at, the ongoing cost is equal to approximately 1/3 of the position that we were going to be paying someone to do this by hand. So, it works out.
Right.
It works out, so.
Okay. Are there any other comments, questions from the board?
That's a red flag for me, Monsieur Clement, to have the CCP fund it when we really don't know, I'm going to say in 3 to 5 years, if there's going to be state funding for CCP. I mean, we're making that assumption because my assumption is that the general fund is going to pay for it. And so that's what I was looking at when I sent my questions out, was, is this going to fall to the general fund? So at least initially, because you'll have funding next year, for next year, I mean the 15-16 budget year, you'll have CCP funding, right?
Well, as of this summer, or as of a month ago, we have a permanent allocation formula for the state realignment monies, and it's much more predictable into the future of what we're going to receive. We've had our CCP analysts project those numbers into the future, and we have a pretty good picture of what we're going to have.
That's the formula, but then you have to assume that the legislature is going to give it to you.
Sure. Well, I mean, they would have to, it's signed permanent at this point.
Huh?
I believe it's in statute.
They don't have to fund it. They don't have, that's why the formula is changing.
I believe when the governor put the additional sales tax on the ballot measure and it was passed, it was to provide the funding for certain law enforcements, including AB 109 realignment.
So when there is a sunset on
There
the
is a
sales,
sunset.
on the sales tax. And then it's not in perpetuity.
Yeah, there was one on the last one too, and it went back, it came back again.
So,
What's
anyway.
the cost there? That would be the ongoing cost then, that Rita's concerned about.
The ongoing cost right now is $23,000 a year.
So and
Right. And
it's an insignificant amount of money, you know, to try to project 5 years in the future about, so I personally, I would probably.
Well, I mean, I guess I feel that when I look at things, I look because it's 23,000 here and it's
Well, sure,
10,000 there,
but
and
there's no way to predict
cumulatively. 5
years in the future. I mean, most likely this is going to be the way the state does things for the next 20 years. And so 20 years from now, we may be looking at a lot more money for, you know, a whole different system. But, you know, looking out over the next 5 years, I don't think there's going to be any issue at all. So it's not the amount of, I mean, not only the amount of money, but also the fact that there's a pretty good funding source for that small amount of money. Two reasons not to worry about it.
I do.
So,
I mean, and it's not just, I mean, I wrote them a list of questions. There were a whole bunch of questions that I had on this. I mean, this was just one part. I mean, fine, you know, so we don't worry about that. You know, we can move to some of the other things I had concerns about. I'm not questioning the need for the case management system. And if I heard you correctly, they're going to be integrated with other departments, even though it's your case management system.
Well, through the RFP process, we are going to be working with and finding out the needs and capacities of the different agencies, primarily TSD, but also probation. We need to make sure the administrative analyst can work with whatever program we are getting, whatever case management system we're getting, so we want it to be effective. The court is moving to a new case management software, so we're going to be working with, well, we're going to seek to work with, hopefully, I don't see why they wouldn't want to work with us on it, the court technology services to make sure that is it something that we can build on? Is it something that we can work towards an integrated justice system? That will be a factor in deciding what we go with. Also, the Sheriff's Office and Angels Camp Police Department. Certainly, you've heard me complaining for how many years about RIMS and the problems that we're having with that. I don't know if the case management system will be something that can work with RIMS, but that's something we're certainly going to be looking at. And it's my hope that we can move towards that. We're not just going to be doing this in a vacuum. We're going to be looking at all the different partners and seeing if there's some kind of way we can maximize the bang for our buck.
Yeah.
Probation as well. We're going to be seeking their input to see if whatever we're looking at can be compatible either today, tomorrow, or next year with something probation's doing.
So let me move on to some of the others. Ms. Lutz, you explained to me about the victim service coordinator position and why that's being funded under CCP. So what about the work that the other victim service coordinators do?
That's Department 21. Is that what you're referring to, our victim witness program in the DA's office, Department 21? That department is still doing the work that they've been doing. AB 109 thrust upon us a whole new set of burdens, a whole new set of victims.
And this person then is being funded to deal with the 109 population?
That was the intent. We were unable to fill the position, and so currently it's an unmet population. It's unmet services. Yes, and so that's the next thing we're going to address, but we just had the opportunity, because of the one-time funding, to try to move this, at least this one prong forward. So we will be regrouping, hopefully by the end of this year, on what to do with the realigned victims portion and the restitution issue, because it's a very important issue. Originally, the legislation actually left out the capacity to collect restitution from inmates that could no longer go to prison. So the 1170s, there was no mechanism to collect restitution from them as there was in prison. That was fixed, and so we need to address it.
The other question about the overtime and on-call for the probation officer that's assigned to the 109 caseload. I couldn't understand why the CCP budget doesn't pick that up.
Well, and
that was nice of you, except the general fund plays for you.
Is this on this one? I'm
Yes,
getting confused.
it's-
This is
yes.
all part of it?
Yes.
it was
It's in their budget.
Yeah, it was in the budget spending plan that was approved as part of the final budget process. But, I mean, I can still address that issue, and I'm not 100% sure what the reasons for that were historically, only to assure you that unlike some of the departments that run 24/7 for us, we don't have a very large overtime budget. It has not become an issue as far as spending excessively out of the probation budget. Most of the time, these guys are in comp time, and I enforce that they take their time off. So I haven't had an issue with that one officer having it that way, but I'm not sure what the original history was. That's, from my understanding, it was in there before, and it's still in there.
I guess I'm looking for it similar to what we did with the prior item about the grant. If the CCP can pay for that cost, then the general fund is not paying for that cost. And I was just, I guess maybe I didn't see it, why the CCP wouldn't be, because the PO is there, in essence, that's her full-time job, is the 109.
Very true.
And why they wouldn't pick up any overtime or on-call. That's.
But I think that's going to be, that's not really this agenda item.
Yes, it is. It's in the budget.
I know, but you're incorporating, you're extending, because the budget's in here, you're extending that issue into this issue, which is not really this issue.
That's right, because that's what we're doing, is modifying the budget. Approving the budget, and it needs a 4/5 vote.
Right, but we're not redoing their entire program. We're just talking about a simple thing.
We made a modification.
Let's keep it simple.
We made a modification to to Castle and Cook. I'm just
Well, that was pretty simple.
asking.
So
Oh,
what I
this is
see,
simple too.
what you've presented here are the spending plan that's current and the new revised one. And in this revision, you're showing how you're taking these monies and putting it over here to look at the purchase of a case management system, correct?
Correct.
All right, so what Supervisor Callaway is referring to, as you do amendments to the plan, there's some changes related to how the overtime was being
I
handled?
mean, I just asked because the agenda item is adjustments to the DA and the CIP budgets. So it's part of the budget. I mean, if you think it's a non-item, that's fine. I'm just
Well, I think it is
wanting
something
to
to bring
take,
back
I'm
maybe
just
and
wanting
discuss.
to take general fund costs and move them, if something else could pay for it, is modify that. But if you're not, if she's working overtime and not getting paid, thank her.
Well, I think the only thing we brought forward today is the change so that I can move forward with the case management
Case
software upgrade
management,
project. As far as addressing overtime and who should pay for the overtime, I think that's something the CCP can discuss, and if the CCP wishes to make that change, we could bring it back. And, you know, I'm standing here thinking, trying to remember how that came about, and I just can't remember. I could go back and look at some notes and discuss it with the chair, because this predated him. And I don't want to speculate why that happened. I'd have to.
I was not at those meetings, so I don't have that history, but what my guess would be, and I could be wrong, maybe that will jog Barbara's memory, but the DPO3 that's in this budget is assigned to the day reporting center, is it not? And so if they were called out on overtime, it may be not related to an AB 109er and would be above their normal hours.
That's different.
That,
But this person spends 100% of their time or close to it on 109
Of their regular time.
of their regular time and has done overtime with 109. If you ever
know.
talk to her. And that's all. That's fine. Drop the subject. I just don't want the general fund paying for something if we can find another mechanism to pay for those costs.
But at the CCP meeting on Friday, didn't you mention that a lot of the high-risk offenders that go to the day reporting center are some of the same clientele, so that they could, in essence, be managed overtime that wasn't related to AB 109? I'm just trying to...
That's correct, and, you know, part of it, as a county, and from an accounting standpoint, you know, you look at, when 109 came in, there was a lot of confusion of how the monies could be spent, whether it could be spent on high-risk probationers or whether it had to be kept strictly to that 109 population. As of this year, there's been some language cleanup around that, defining that we can use it for, that we can use these funds for local supervision. Local supervision is defined in the code, means the supervision of an adult felony offender on probation, mandatory supervision, or post-release community supervision, meaning that they've opened up and broadened the definition for how we can spend that. Essentially, the intent of the legislature was to build a better local community correction system. And so I think we as a county very, very recently have been working to broaden that and make sure that we are building that system. I do think that DA Uke's request for her case management system today fits into that, as we're trying to move toward becoming a data-driven community correction system here. We can't make data-driven decisions without data, and I would ask that you support her request for this case management system, and that you look to view this as a whole. Are we doing our best to design a local community correction system for all of our offenders in Calaveras County?
Thank you. Any public comments on this item? All right, seeing no public comments, I'll bring it back to the board. Are there any further questions or comments? I'll entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion made by Supervisor Edson, second by Supervisor Wright, to approve a CCP spending plan adjustment to allow the District Attorney's Office to purchase a case management system, as well as the adjustments to the District Attorney and CIP budgets. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Item number 17, from the Administrative Office, adopt a resolution conditionally approving a contract with Randy Bells, DBA, as RB Development for the construction of new airfield lighting and electrical improvements in the amount of $609,650, and authorize the County Administrative Officer to sign the notice of award and the notice to proceed, provided that the required performance and labor bonds are executed by California Admitted Securities.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Zachariah Collum, representing the airport and administration today. Kathy Zancanel, the airport manager, and I are coming to you the culmination of several months of coming before the board, talking about grants for an airfield lighting project. We are now ready to award the contract. It has been, we've gone through the RFP process. We had 3 companies respond to that RFP. Randy Bales was the least expensive for the base bid, which is what we're looking to award here today. That base bid was $609,650. The next closest was almost $730,000, and the third bid was $1,200,000. So it is our recommendation, along with the FAA, who has reviewed all of them, that we award this contract to Randy Bales, or RB Development, for the airfield lighting project.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
And I did want to make a comment, is that this is a conditional approval, providing that the contractor can get the required bonds. If for some reason he is unable to get the required bonds, then we will either have to go to the second bidder or to go back out to bid.
I have personally heard from the surety that as soon as the contract is signed, because they can't issue the bonds until the contract is signed, that we will have those bonds.
Okay. Any public comments on this item? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second?
I have a motion made by Supervisor Callaway, second by Supervisor Wright, to adopt a resolution conditionally approving a contract with Randy Bales, DBA RB Development, for the construction of a new airfield lighting and electrical improvements in the amount of $609,650, and authorize the County Administrative Officer to sign the notice of award and the notice to proceed, provided that the required performance and labor bonds are executed by California Admitted Securities. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Moving on to number 18, brought to us by the Administrative Office, authorize a budget transfer from the Airport T Hangar Construction Fund in the amount of $34,955 to the airport budget to cover the county's portion of the airport lighting and electrical improvement project. This requires a 4/5 votes of the board. Zachariah?
Thank you. You'll remember that Kathy and I came to you requesting a grant application to the California Department of Transportation Division of Aeronautics for $34,995. The DOT determined that we are ineligible for those matching funds. Unfortunately, this project came after we had submitted our project list in January of 2013, and they've determined that we're not eligible for it. Those funds are available for the airport through the the T Hangar Construction Fund, and we are asking the board, 4/5 vote, to allow us to transfer those funds and use those funds to complete this project.
So there's money in the bank, but we're transferring it from one place to another.
Yes.
To get the project done.
Yeah,
That's correct.
it's in the airport.
Okay.
It's in a designated fund.
Designated fund, no general fund. Any comments or questions from the board? Any public comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board.
Second?
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson. Authorize a budget transfer from the Airport T Hangar Construction Fund in the amount of $34,955 to the airport budget to cover the county's portion of the airport lighting and electrical improvement project. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0.
Thank you very much.
Meeting the 4/5 requirement. Item number 19, the Auditor Controller. Auditor Controller recommends that the Board of Supervisors approve the resolution as submitted to establish the fiscal year 2014-15 appropriation limits for the County of Calaveras and special districts. Good morning, Rebecca.
Morning, Rebecca Callen, Auditor Controller. So this is just an annual resolution that I bring to the Board of Supervisors every year. It's required under law that we bring forth, you'll hear it called the GAN limit, but basically it's an appropriations limit for any entity that receives property taxes. So we calculate this for our special districts, for the lighting districts, and for the CSAs and for the county as a whole. Special districts that are non-board governed, that receive property tax dollars are required to do the appropriations limit calculation on their own. That is one thing that I had discussed with the board when I came to you, that we were going to discuss with some special districts that maybe they would like my office to calculate it. So we are just dealing with ours. The important thing to note is really it is kind of a type of protection for the taxpayer to ensure that you're not overtaxing. And so it's important that for us that we are always aware of what our special districts in the county are receiving in terms of property taxes compared to what our appropriations are going to be. And then also it's really important also to look at the fund balance. So if we ever have particularly the CSAs or the lighting districts who have been accumulating a large balance of fund balance, it's probably a good thing to start having some plans for infrastructure expansion, because it could be argued by property tax property taxpayers that we may be sitting on a little more money than we need to. So it's just something to kind of be aware of on a budgetary basis. At this point, it looks like everything is good. And so pretty standard. We did publish a public notice if anyone had any questions, and that was running for for the required time frame.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments from the board?
So how much is the lighting district sitting on?
I would have to go back and look at that. I would say that some of them have not that big of balances, some of them do. And so that's something that my office is probably going to work with the administrative office to go through those particular lighting districts and see if it's possible that we may need to look at expansion of or replacement of some of the lighting. So
if you think of it, can you send me for Valley Springs and Santa Cruz?
Yeah.
There's also funding opportunity out there with the state for retrofitting some of these lights with new lights, more energy efficient.
There is, and so, I mean, we have been replacing lights, but it hasn't always necessarily come out of the lighting district balance.
They have a board, right? They have a board?
You are the board.
We are the board?
Of the lighting districts.
So who makes the decision on what light gets fixed and replaced?
The advisory committee.
Really?
Well, they suggest. You're the one that approves it.
To get
Haven't
fixed.
yet.
Well, because they don't really have the money, that's why. She's talking,
So
I mean,
we
if
have-
you want to cut down the brass tacks, probably the only place that really has applicated to that, in particular that I know of, is CSA 1, which is in my area.
No, there's lighting districts that haven't.
Yeah.
Well, when I took office, the CSA 1 had $1.8 million.
Well, yeah,
We have lighting, there's a
So,
variety
yeah.
of lighting districts throughout the county. Supervisor Callaway?
Yes.
that's right.
I understand. Could you explain to me, there has to be a minimum amount of tax revenue for special districts before they have to report the GAN limit?
It's a percent basis, and that percent basis was back when they were under the original Prop 13, and I'd have to go back and look, but I think it was like 12 cents per, I don't remember. But it's based on that
78 right.
year.
So if you have special districts that have minimal revenue,
The problem is, back in 1978, they didn't. And so back in 1978, they actually met that threshold. So they were required to do an appropriations limit. If you looked at them today, they don't meet that. And the unfortunate part is how the law is written. It was based on back then. So if it applied to them back in 1978 and it doesn't apply to them today, they're still required to calculate an appropriations limit and report it.
I mean,
Unfortunately.
for some of them, just
Yeah.
to do that would take their budget.
Yes.
So how do they get out from having to do that? It's, I mean, I look at some
They
of the
haven't,
special
they
districts.
haven't gotten, they're still required to do it, they just haven't done it. So,
Okay, that's big, but now they know they have to?
Yes.
But I take something like the Vallecito Cemetery
Right.
District. I mean, if they have $1,000 or
Right.
$2,000 and they go do a GAN limit
For the light.
study and they either pay you or pay
Mm-hmm.
someone who knows how to do it, I mean, that's gonna take their budget.
Big
And
chunk.
I don't, somehow I can't believe that they should have to do that.
so
Is
this
there
goes
enough-
back to the state controller looking at districts and LAFCO and realizing that there are some districts that may have made sense back in 1978 and they don't make sense today. They're not operationally capable of being a district and actually being able to afford all of the operations, which includes the audits and everything else that comes with being a taxing jurisdiction.
But you made the change or through the state where they don't have to audit once every 5 years or? what
Some
was
of
it
them
that we
did, but that's not with the state. That's an audit. They're still required to do their annual state controller reporting. They're still required to do their annual compensation reporting. That part doesn't go away. The audit, that's the part that can be changed to a biannual or quincentennial.
Yeah, which you did, or we did.
Some
I
of
mean,
them
at
have
your
done that.
recommendation.
Some of them have.
So is this something LAFCO should be looking at? I mean, I
LAFCO
feel-
is looking, but we have one LAFCO representative, and it's not just for Calaveras County. So, you know, I think that when I talked to Mr. Benoit, he said that they are looking, but I think their focus was on water, and then it was on fire, and so by the time they get to cemetery and lighting, I mean, it could be 10 years from now. And in the meantime, the state controller's office is stepping up on, you know, contacting my office to find out where the audit is, where is their state controller reporting, because they can't get a hold of particular districts. So we're just kind of in this really weird gray area right now that, you know, you as a board can't, you don't have any authority over them. LAFCO really doesn't have any authority over them. Even if LAFCO said that it's probably a good idea for them to consolidate or be dissolved, or all they can do is make a recommendation. No one has to follow that recommendation. So it's special districts are kind of a different beast. So the ones that are running well we don't ever have an issue. And the ones that aren't tend to be very, very small. They tend to be truly 100% voluntary. They're just trying to do the best that they can, and they do not have enough resources to operate under the requirements set upon them by the state.
I guess I'm looking for a way to help the small special districts to keep them from their mission when they have to do things like this, which costs them a larger percentage of their budget, which shouldn't. So what I'm hearing you say is you can't do anything? And
No,
the
districts,
state, the state is looking at making changes for these small districts? And is this something I could bring up at LAFCO?
You could, and you'll probably get the same response that I got,
Oh,
which is eventually it will come to a head.
You bring it to CSEC.
yes.
I mean, you know, how you kind of get ahead of this, well, I mean, you're either going to delay the inevitable, which is some of these districts probably just shouldn't exist.
But if they don't exist, then who runs the cemetery or who runs?
Well, that's why they
the
look
small
at
water
consolidation,
district?
or they look at,
Well, they just consolidated part of the cemetery
Yeah.
district.
yeah. So in
your-
other,
In your district, they did?
Yeah. I think they did San Andreas, Pioneer, and then there's one over by Valley Springs, or Double Springs. I
And
think they-
in Pioneer, too?
The Pioneer Cemetery, yeah. They wanted
Oh,
to-
Pioneer
yeah,
Cemetery, I was thinking.
not Pioneer Cemetery. They wanted to consolidate them.
Oh,
so
they've
that-
done that?
I believe so.
Because it hasn't come before LAFCO, so I don't know if it needs to, but that's immaterial. I mean, I think it's great if they can do that.
so I think that's probably what they're looking at.
They're actually trying to get the Catholic cemetery to join in too.
Something's got to give, yeah. These districts are so small, and the
Yeah.
demands for their services are so great in this day and age.
Yeah.
And there's not enough money, I mean, barely to maintain. They're so dependent on volunteer labor and inmate resources and school kids and whoever else to help out, so.
Well, I mean, we have some districts where just their insurance,
Yeah.
it will wipe out their
Yeah.
budget.
Yeah.
Just their insurance coverage for workers' comp to cover the high school kid that's mowing the lawns can wipe out their entire budget.
So when those three cemeteries, they each get different taxes, how are they doing that?
I said they were trying to consolidate.
Oh,
Trying to.
that, yeah, I mean, it's a
Well,
great idea.
and, you know, we did have the fire district that did consolidate into Calco. So I think that, you know, some of the districts are trying to get ahead of it, and they're trying to figure out where they can kind of save some resources. But some probably are just,
Some of them's hard to even get a board meeting.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and then that whole brown act
So,
stuff.
you know, in terms of how do you stop it, I think it's inevitably going to happen. How you delay it, you know, my office, you know, we can do some, but that's why I go back to, there has to be funding. So, I mean, you know, I have to have a body to do this work. So whether it's the districts that are going to pay for it, or it's the board that's going to pay for it, or the tooth fairy, I don't really know, but there has to be. Peter.
Yeah. You could take it out of CSA 1 lighting district.
Yeah, look at that.
So,
Okay, the item before us is recommending to the Board of Supervisors approving a resolution as submitted to establish the fiscal year 2014 appropriation limits for the County of Calaveras and special districts. So we've heard board comments and questions. Are there any public comments on this item? Yes.
The special district issue got me involved with you folks to start with long time ago.
Dang.
Is there any way we can resolve that?
We already did. He wanted out of it, and we let him out of it. He's out. He's not in it anymore.
Ma'am, am I addressing the chair or individual
No,
supervisors?
please address
So I do it properly.
board as a
I don't want to create any problems. But to me, is an issue is not LAFCO, because as a self-appointed, unaccountable directors to my special district, they break LAFCO rules by Public Works because they decide, hey, I'm not going to follow this particular rule because I'm not going to do that road because it's too steep. Then another staff over there said, well, charge the suckers anyway. And when you wanted some people to be advisors, so you got all these old folks, retired folks at their own expense, at own time, take care of the duties of public works, when they disagree with something, you fire them. The board fires them. Well, we eventually fired that particular supervisors, and we're working on the rest of the 5 that go along with it. But just think about it. One supervisor said, how come there's no volunteers? I would suggest that you might take a look at the new rules that Public Works written up for CSA 1. There's a little paragraph, what volunteers can do. And they had a good reason. In the process, when you fired every one of those folks who volunteered, it should give the appearance of threatening an elected official. Talking to the elected official, she said, well, I'm retiring, I don't care. Now, I bet you any money for nobody on this board was gonna threaten this lady. She's not planning to retire. That was done from the witnesses, by the way. Because the money that was used, not for roads, it was used to clean a creek. That's wonderful, except they should have been done with general fund.
30 seconds.
What you call slush fund. Now, I was hoping that can be taken care of in-house, not to get the grand jury involved or another stuff like FEMA, CEQA, Fish and Game. I want that Rancho area 5th district to be a special district, not a county district. Because we don't necessarily have to make a commitment to any organized labor to do the only eligible to do works. Now, this might be nice to certain elected officials in lieu of campaign donations, but I believe the 5th district can do a hell of a lot better in a free market to service that community than what this board has done in the past. I don't believe fighting the law, but I have no problem fighting the lawmakers. And if I have to do my best to replace every one of those self-appointed, unaccountable individuals, I have no problem with it. One way or another, I will stick my nose into anybody and everybody's district and do my best to make sure it doesn't worthwhile what they did to that 5th district and Rancho in the past or present.
Thank you for your comments.
You're more than welcome. Thank you.
Any other public comments on this item? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve.
Second?
I have a motion made by Supervisor Wright, second by Supervisor Edson, to approve the resolution as submitted to establish the fiscal year 2014-15 appropriation limits for the County of Calaveras and special districts. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 4-0 with Supervisor Spellman absent.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Moving on, we have,
Oh, that was faster than I thought.
we don't
No,
have,
there's no agenda item.
we have no agenda item from this point. We just have a tentative schedule.
I guess we'll just have to adjourn, because we don't have it on the agenda. I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Just we'll have to do it next time.
Okay, is there a second to that? Motion made to adjourn, is there a second?
We can't even do that.
Okay. As
That's true, it's not on the
chair,
agenda.
as chair, I'm going to adjourn today's
All right,
meeting.
good
Thank
job.
you.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.